Um, Welcome everyone for tonight's talk. It's a so-called post-mortem talk that looks at the crowdfunding campaign of our project Sefirot. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Georg Hobmeier. I don't want to provide a picture. You've seen me already. So this is how I feel like post-pandemic. So it's my inner self. I'm one of the founders of Causa Creations, which is a studio for digital games and immersive experiences. And I'm also a member of the Austrian art collective Gold Extra. It's worth mentioning that because both entities are involved in the Sefirot project. Causa is the main producing entity, and Gold Extra we're supporting the early phases of the project with a grant and helped us to do some research and early prototyping. Now, I'm just going to give you a very, very brief overview of what Sefirot is. It's a tarot-based board game. It includes also a novel tarot deck that is based on numerous tarot traditions and also tries to find its own way. And as a game, it's also a hybrid of divination and card game mechanics. Is anyone not familiar with tarot? And while we already added the Kabbalah, as a matter of fact, does anyone not know what tarot cards are, or did anyone never hear of the term Kabbalah? Raise your hand, please, if you're not familiar. If you don't need to raise your hand, then I'm quite happy that I have a fairly knowledgeable audience. Oh, Manuel and Flavia are asking what the hell those things are. So tarot is originally known as tarocchi. It used to be like a playing card deck that was kind of repurposed for divination starting in the 19th century, and then it became increasingly popular in the 20th century, and it now experiences a complete hype, mainly in the Western world, but it's becoming a bit of a global hype as well. So I was told that in North America, it's not only customs to have a Bible in your hotel room, but also a tarot deck. So this is how popular it has become. And the Kabbalah is well, an ancient mythical system that stems from Judaic traditions, not at the center of the religion, but rather it's an kind of an esoteric, mostly esoteric, sometimes also exoteric knowledge at the fringes of the faith, which and over the century it was adapted into Christian versions and would say like occult versions in the 19th century. And this is something that Sefirot is also connected to. This project is a collaboration between myself and also like and other people from Causa Creations with the artists Viv Tanner and Eli Baum. These are two outstanding artists, very much known for their work on the webcomic Heart of Gold. And they, in particular circles, there are such as webcomics illustration, are fairly known. So their large social media following had been like a huge factor in supporting this project. The project itself is, as I said, it's a game. It has solo mode. It has two-player modes where you can play with each other and against each other. And what you see right now is obviously the two-player version. As a Kickstarter, this campaign ran from March 24th for 30 days. It gained the support of almost 6,000 backers and almost touched 400,000 euros. That makes it the biggest board game ever to come out of Austria on Kickstarter, and the second biggest game ever coming out of Austria on Kickstarter. The beginnings, however, and now we're going more into detail, are much more humble. This is a first sketch back in 2016. and this is how Sefirot started. It was a research project of mine where I tried to combine Kabbalistic principles, the concept of divination through cards, and card game mechanics. It was a little bit of a, I would say, like hobby project to relieve myself from the burden of digital development and also working with like a complicated interdisciplinary groups. I just wanted to sit down and work on something analog without having to deal with technology whatsoever. And as said, Gold Extra was supporting me big time in the beginning, allowing me to have like the funds and the resources to just sit down and do this kind of work. Fairly early, due to the introduction of that my friend Sarah Hebel made to Eli and Viv, we started to work together, and these are first sketches made by the artists from the very, very early days. In the beginning, it was just a single player game. So the idea was not to have like a 2-player game at all. It was just like let's make a solitaire game with tarot cards. Let's find our own imagery for that. And only later we added a 2-player board. This is one of the first sketches for that one. First with a mode where you would play against each other, which originally the first version was simply called War of the Worlds. And then later on, inspired by a colleague, there was also like cooperative mode, which I personally think was the most fun of them all, is the most fun of them all. In 2019, we got a little bit more serious, and we also discussed a multi-artist approach. We had a team coming together. There was contributions by other illustrators as well, Brian Main and Peter Diamond. Brian was also very much involved in doing a lot of groundwork and research on how to bring this further. But essentially, we divided for numerous reasons that 4 illustrators on one project is way too many cooks in the kitchen. The styles would differ too much. The communication would be too tricky. And, it's also like, it's very hard to find like the right chemistry in such situations. So working with Viv and Eli as the sole artist seemed like a way to move this forward. And very early, we were considering funding this with Kickstarter. Numerous reasons. First of all, we didn't want to finance something that would be quite costly, like a lot of effort and therefore time and therefore money being put into art. And we also wanted to use Kickstarter to kind of build a community out of that. And Viv and Eli already had a project that was successfully funded, a print run for their game Heart of Gold. It was not just a print run, there was like a myriad of items. It was a beautiful Kickstarter that was quite successful. And we thought like, okay, this is something that we should take into consideration. Let's see how we could move that forward. And at this time, I stumbled over an article by Kid Fox Games, as by Tanya X Short, to be precise, called Years in the Making, where she talks in detail about the long game of making their project, Boyfriend Dungeon, into a Kickstarter success. And this, when I read this, it was like, oh, okay, it's not that easy. So they worked years on the visibility. They produced numerous games before on console, on itch.io. I know this is a digital game, but a lot of these things translate. They already had a successful Kickstarter. They started to build all sorts of pages in advance. They took them like a long time and a lot of energy to make this happen. And at this point, I thought, because in 2019, we were like, yeah, we can do this in half a year. It's like, oh my God, that's not a good idea. We really have to work on visibility. We have to build a community. We cannot like run into this with like, woo, Kickstarter, who wants to buy our game? That suddenly, thanks to 10x Short, didn't seem like a good idea. We took it a bit slower. Slow is good. Not a very popular thing to say, especially to backers when they wait for shipping, but sometimes slow is important and good. And these are like, okay, we're going to start producing a card. We're going to share things on social media. We tried Reddit, which was hard. Instagram, which was okay. Twitter, which was great. And when we posted around May and June on Twitter, we realized, ooh, this is going places. You know, this is people like that. People love the art. People dig the concept. This could really go somewhere. Now you might think, yeah, but going somewhere as a tower thing, you know, surely that's a small niche, you know, especially people coming from bigger markets such as digital games, you know. They would look at us a little bit like, yeah, but what are you doing, like a tower deck? This is like a weird hobby of yours. But at that point, it has to be said that tower market, strong market. So this is, as said, this is a huge phenomena, particularly in North America, but through the influence of these cultures and the pop culture of North America, this is really like kind of grows globally as a phenomena. And popular decks can sell up to 250,000 units a year. This is not unheard of. And at the same time, as a market, it's much less crowded than digital games, which we all know is horribly overrun. Now, this was very motivational. We got like, okay, this is interesting. You know, there's a strong market. People are interested. It seems to kind of hit the spot. So we continued the art development. It's important to say that this is not something that can be rushed. You know, it's a huge process to make these cards. And these thumbnails might look like fairly harmless, but before thumbnails are even made, there's research. You know, these elements that happen in these cards, they are drawn from various traditions. There is a lore that sits behind it. So we have like a fictional story running in the background of this. Then we have the tradition of the other cards. And from that, the artists kind of depart essentially on their journeys. Then we don't make it a democratic process. You know, we're then essentially the rest of the team gives feedback, but it's their choice and their aesthetic decision alone to finish things. And we might help out with like minute detail of like, could be that. But essentially, this is when it really, really is in their hands. So one card, especially the major arcana for tower cards, are divided in minor and major arcana. These cards, the major arcana can take up to 2 weeks for a single card. So this takes a lot of time. The game development is, of course, something completely different. I mean, we had to design the boards, but I would say they were like much more simple because they had to follow particular mechanics and then the idea of our background story. But then, you know, we had these boards on which we were able to move our experiments. That's a very, very early version of the single player board, the schematics behind it, and the same with like 2-player board and the schematics behind the 2-player board. The fields themselves are set in stone for now, but we are still fine-tuning the mechanic. And for me, this is a delight, you know, like to work on a game and be able to iterate it for such a long time. The rules are still not done, and we are still pushing things in little places around. So version 1.0 might be done next year. Yes. The roadmap of the original project was to do something in 2019. And as you have seen, we've been looking at it and going like, no, this is not possible. No, we have to believe what Tanya X Short said. You know, this takes more time. You know, you cannot just do this and expect anything to come out of it. We had a roadmap to let it happen in 2020, but that was quickly dismissed as well, because it was becoming increasingly clear that we need more time also in other projects. And everything was getting, of course, delayed by the pandemic. And then it was delayed to late February 21. And then the last delay happened because we wanted to choose an auspicious date. I'm not going to go into detail, but Chinese astrology was involved, and the date chosen was a day to be very auspicious and good to open a business. So the moment we picked that one, everything was like set in stone and smooth. So that's very suspicious, the auspicious date. Summer of 2020, we got in touch with Kickstarter. They are extremely approachable and help out backers. We knew a guy, Michael Liebe. He's essentially like a coordinator based in Berlin. And he connected us to Meredith Graves, who's a former punk rock singer and head of music at Kickstarter. That's her official role. Her unofficial role is that she runs a secret clandestine network of witches, kind of operating from within Kickstarter. And she supports the local Kickstarter tarot community quite a lot. And these are quite successful projects, breaking very often into 5 and 6 digit numbers, and even 7 recently. So the tarot Kickstarter is like a very, very powerful one and a very successful one, especially concerned with the number of projects. Meredith was incredibly helpful. I mean, both of them, but Meredith even helped us with the game design. She was the one that was like, hey, how about a coup mode? And she was a big inspiration in that regard. In the fall, we wanted to get a little bit more involved with the board game marketing community, which is like a fairly huge one across numerous groups, especially on Facebook. Very approachable, very nice, very generous, but we did feel a little bit like the goth kids nevertheless, because everyone was like doing cool games with meeples and battle cards, and we were like, hi, we are doing like something with tarot cards, and you get weird looks. And the other reason why we got weird looks is because we had a different target audience. Our audience, we did a board game, but it was a board game for people who were really into tarot, and not a board game for board gamers, because it's a slightly different demographic. So over these months and frankly also years, we were also growing our community, and this started to get quite serious when the art was coming out on a more regular way. And as you can see, 2019 was fairly relaxed. In 2020, late 2020, things became quite serious. And in 21, we essentially broke the internet, especially Twitter. Twitter was our main hub in the beginning, and then we started to increasingly get involved with the Instagram community that focuses on tarot. And while the people on Twitter were mostly fans of the art, the Instagram community is like active tarot practitioner. And this is where tarot happens, one might say. Like, there's tarot influencers, and everyone is on Instagram. And the people were incredibly supportive. It was so great. It was like, oh my God, it's a community on the internet, and it doesn't suck totally. I mean, there's always bad apples, but this felt very, very wholesome, and still feels mostly very, very wholesome. The thing that was a little bit of a kind of a not too positive surprise is that if you want to play on Instagram, you have to pay. That means there is a very, very limited amount of possibility to grow smaller accounts. These days, it was probably different like a few years ago, if you are not paying advertisement. You don't have to pay a lot, but you have to pay your $5 a day in order to kind of get the visibility that you need to kind of become visible to get those 10,000 likes. And if you pay, things are great. If you don't pay, yeah, things might happen. But curiously enough, account growth without paid advertisement is incredibly difficult. So we paid and we played, and it worked out for us. What we also did, particularly in the winter, is that we started to calculate every single piece of cost that might arise during the campaign. Our CTO and chief programmer at Causa Creations, Christian Knapp, did all the math for that. And in order to do so, we also needed to get like a myriad of offers. So, excuse me, we, and when I say we, I mean Jean-Paul Schwab, our producer, contacted fulfillment companies, board game and card printing companies, and companies who would do whatever things we wanted to produce on top, like be it journals or altar cloths or pins. So all these companies were contacted, and they were contacted with the intention to produce things in Europe. We did not want to ship things thrice around the world and then again back and forth. So it was really the idea was really like keep it in Europe and keep it eco-friendly. Don't let those goods kind of go back and forth on container ships the whole time. We also started to grow, use ads to grow a newsletter, which was something that people were like, it's the most important thing for every campaign. You need a huge newsletter. The newsletter is at the center of things. We were like, okay, yeah, that sounds important. Let's try this out. And we did grow it for a fair bit, but it turned out in the end, a newsletter is very cool. It's very good to have it, but it's not as important as some people told us. That is for us. So it was January 2021, just 2.5 months away from the campaign. And we started to realize it's like, okay, we got a good understanding on how people run board game Kickstarters, and we cannot run a board game Kickstarter and talk to the Tarot community at the same time. It is not possible. We are in a different position. This is a different audience. Some of these board game people, they really like Settlers of Catan, but they don't like tarot stuff. So like, why should we even cater to their needs? Let's try to find something that really focuses on the board game community. And this is how we started to like build our, I would say, custom, mostly social media, but also harassing people via back channels plan in order to kind of grow this campaign as big as possible. At this point, it was not possible anymore to do it only via the core team. The core team, of course, is Eli and Viv, Jean-Bor, myself, and Ben, who was not mentioned yet, who did a lot of 3D content and was of tremendous help as a runner for all sorts of communication as well. But we had to involve several other people, small furry games, not Fury, but furry, huge difference. Got involved with copywriting and fixing rules. Moonshadow Garden, which we met via Instagram, made consulting on ads, produced trailers and additional media. Bakonoe, aka Nikki, started to work on a 3D sculpture for like our highest pledge level. Wobbler Sound made voice recording for the trailer, which was provided by Lisa Nielsen Spieler, by the way. Thomas Orziger, an intern at that time, was incredibly helpful with research and press, coming originally from Games Press himself. Rahel Biener made motion graphics. Christian Knapp, already said, was making analytics and finance stuff. Brian Main was making additional communication. Sarah Hebel was doing design consulting and coaching for me sometimes. Gold Extra had previously supported us and still did in some capacity. And then last but not least, Leali Haven helped us with Hebrew, because there were some Hebrew elements in the Kabbalah, and our Hebrew was a little bit too lousy. So she was our consultant, and she's also my dentist. So if you're in Vienna and need a good dentist, I can fix you up. Leali is great. So lots of people involved. That means this costs money. Otherwise, it's not doable. You want to have a great trailer. You can either pay to have a great trailer or take like a lot of time to do it yourself. So we had to generate the funds to make this happen, and we did so by cross-financing this with other projects, with work for hire, with with mixed reality app prototypes, all sorts of things. And I'm incredibly humbled by the generosity of my fellow founders at the company who could also have said like, hell no, we're not gonna cross-finance your Taro Kickstarter. We're a digital games company. Why should we do this? But they were like, yeah, this could be interesting. Let's do it. Very unorthodox decision. So coming back to the timeline, in late January, we started working on this strange object. This was an idea by Jombor, and we called it the influencer box. And the idea was to send preview prints to powerful Instagram influencers in the hope that they would, we of course asked them if we could send it to them. And the idea was that they might potentially use these boxes and the items inside to support our launch. And the reactions were very, very generous, and people did, first of all, receive the stuff in time, and then they really did support us. The only thing that was a really, really close call, curiously enough, was sending it to Athens. It took 1 week longer to send the box to Athens than it took to send the box to Sydney in Australia. So careful when using Greek mail. Another thing we did that was already now February was to really get down and eyes on the prize, get the things done to launch the campaign. So we started making the page. We started to decide on the actual pledges, which was a huge back and forth debate. What should we add? What should we have? Add-ons. And at that point, if I look back, I really have to advise you to use names for your pledges / rewards that are self-explanatory. Because as of this day, if someone says like, I have a 9 of Pentacles pledge, I still go like, excuse me, what? 9 of Pentacles? Is that 9 of Cups? No, that's something else. Is it a 10 of Pentacles? So call it the Tarot deck pledge, the digital reward deck, whatever, like just keep it very, very kind of self-explanatory. We also use a system called Add-Ons. This is a little bit novel. Normally, this is something that was kind of came into crowdfunding more via so-called pledge managers in a post-campaign mode. But Kickstarter started to experiment with that in late 2020, and it was an option to have it for our campaign. So to make something quite complex, even more complicated, we said like, sure, add-ons, pins, art books, additional tarot decks, everything. The system is a little bit buggy. There's a lot of things with like the web side of Kickstarter, they're a little bit, and unfortunately, the add-ons is still something that can cause problems. The stretch goals were really like a hoot to make, particularly the ones that were completely unrealistic. I think Viv and Eli had, I'm not sure I think it was a musical for Heart of Gold as a stretch goal. And we said like, if maybe it didn't happen with like the musical this time, but maybe we'll kind of make something theatrical happen. So I think the 4 million euro stretch goal was a circus show, and Jumbo was already totally ready and already had like established contacts to a Hungarian circus company. During the campaign, we moved stretch goals around again, and which was quite advisable and sometimes a little bit tricky, but we set the foundations for that at that point in the campaign. And we also made the trailer, and I'm now going to take a little break from talking, and I'm just going to show you the trailer.
Sefirot is an ancient game from the lost lands of Dioscoria. Played in numerous variations with tarot cards, higher powers will decide upon the player's destiny, their triumph, or their downfall. In its solitaire version, a world-spanning tree of life becomes the stage for the player's challenge of the fates themselves, trying to overcome the universe's perilous duality. The game can also be played together in numerous modes for two people. They might battle for the stars or embark on a tender dance that will reveal their joined fortune. Sefirot is being produced by the game designers of Causa Creations in close cooperation with the artist duo Viv Tanner and Eli Baum. For this first edition, you will not only be able to get the game itself, but also a standalone tarot deck, prints, pins, and other pieces. Sefirot, a tarot-based board game.
Oh, it's a very relaxing song, isn't it? I like this trailer. Yeah, if you want to see Super John Talks with non-lagging trailers, you have to purchase the premium subscription. Otherwise, you're not assigned the bandwidth because it's free. So you won't get something that doesn't lag. So trailer was done. It should have been done in the middle of February, but I think it was done in March. And in early March, we put the sign-up lists live, which means it essentially you can subscribe to the launch, and then you get a notification for that. And we put it on, and we were like, yeah, cool. Let's see what happens. And then people got quite hyped, and we were like, oh, this is something, like we ended up with like, not quite sure, I think it was like 2,000 followers for the launch, but I really cannot remember to be honest. And then the launch day actually came closer and closer and closer, and I was like, okay, so now it's gonna happen. So it was April the 24th, 5 o'clock, and we hit the button and all hell broke loose. We did not expect this to happen. We hoped for like 10,000 the first day. The game was funded in 17 minutes. And on the first day, it made more than 50,000 euros. So what did we do? We launched it. We primed everyone, all of these social media followers, all the different websites we used, our own websites. We went to every single person that we knew that it might be interested. We threatened our families. I, in particular, threatened my family. We made guides for our aging parents to purchase things online. And we really, really pressed the button on social media. So let's not forget that Viv and Eli are really, really strong, especially on Twitter and Instagram. And they made like a huge effort to make kind of every second count. And I think this is what made things like really, really explode. On an emotional level, it was crazy. It was like things went on, and then it was just like screams, messages, sending out more messages, more screams, 17 minutes. Schomburg went kind of half crazy. And then like a barrage of comments, which we started to answer. And then the next thing I remember was it was like 9:30 in the evening, and someone like pushed a pizza in front of me. But otherwise, it was a complete frenzy. And it wasn't also that like we went like, cool, we made a successful Kickstarter. But in the beginning, in the first 3 days, there was such a frenzy that we didn't emotionally, maybe intellectually, but not emotionally realize that this was a success. I think it took me, I think it was on a Saturday afternoon. I remember I like went to pick up my family at the train station, and going there, realized like, shit, it's a super successful campaign. And that was like the first moment when I actually realized it. And Schomburg told me with him it happened on the train when he left Vienna, like 4 days after the campaign ended. So yeah, so emotionally, this is something that was like very, very confusing. You know, we were not expecting that, and we could not process it because it was also such an onslaught. So where did these people come from? Well, they came from Kickstarter, obviously, you know, because Kickstarter brings people towards campaigns. But in order to do so, you know, Kickstarter needs, you know, first kind of an interest in campaigns. So if you move into their magic zones, and they also helped us, by the way, by featuring us, giving us their Games We Love badge. But in order to even reach that, you know, you needed a little, like a particular level of numbers. So where did these people come from? So 2.39% of our pledges came from our own website, Sefirot.games, and our newsletter. That was nice, so that this worked. People might have taken like detours via other social media sites, but with the newsletter, it wasn't big, but it was a very, very good conversion. I think like 10 or 12% of the people in the newsletter were converted into backers, and this was quite something. Facebook and Instagram combined had 3.16%. And with Instagram, I think it's a little treacherous because we are bigger on Instagram than what the conversions actually indicate. But Instagram is strange because it really, really kind of doesn't allow you to put links anywhere. You know, so it's link in bio. So people might jump fairly quickly to other means to access the site. For example, they might just use Google, which was 3.44%. Now, and then our officially biggest social media platform was Twitter, which brought in 9.35%. That is officially, by the way. There's probably other ways that people might come via Twitter, and that is the mysterious biggest of them all, the unknown. So 14.31% of people came in from the outside, but it cannot be specified where they came from. It's direct/unknown. So we are still pondering why that is. If people used like particular blockers to actually disallow tracking, but we don't know where these people come from. This big, huge gorilla that bought all this stuff. Geographically, it's of course much easier because Kickstarter is, at least on this front, providing very accurate data. Well, they have to. So 78% of people are from North America, mainly the US and also Canada. 16% is Europe, and 3% Asia, and the rest is 3% rest. Now, it's not just tarot that is huge in North America, but it's also crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is not really big in China, for example. I know that there is efforts to build up crowdfunding there, but it's really like it's a North American phenomenon. So that, in combination with the tarot, is such a North American phenomenon, kind of results in these kind of fairly strong numbers. Now, we got a lot of attention, and it was great. But at the same time, success attracts attention, and attention attracts assholes. And we had to realize that abuse is not a zero-sum game. Just because 4 people say something nice and there's 1 people that really kind of fucks things up for you, doesn't mean that you have like 3 positive voices and the other one is canceled out. It's actually quite the opposite. Negative voices can have a huge impact on people working on such campaigns in communication. And also of the rest of the team, because everyone reads these messages. They're public, and they can really kind of destroy morale. And I want you to imagine like a bowl of beautiful spaghetti bolognese. It can be vegan with soy or minced meat, whatever you prefer. And then imagine one of these little morsels of meat/soy is slightly less red, but a little bit more brown than the other morsels. And that is because it's a piece of shit in your spaghetti bolognese. And that's how abuse feels like, someone shat into your spaghetti bolognese. And just because the 99% of the spaghetti bolognese is not shit, doesn't mean that you can eat it and enjoy it, because someone shat in your food, The meal is ruined. So that said, we and you still have to eat the spaghetti bolognese. That's the issue. I want to quickly point out that most people were very, very polite. And let's look at who these people were that sent this abuse. Yes, what a surprise. It was white males. 100% of abusive and rude messages came from so-called Western people, like from people from Europe and North America, mainly North America and mainly the US. And the huge majority of those were men. And that was really, really surprising. And the most shocking surprise was, and this is something that really, really surprised me, that we had fellow creators, authors of board game, coming into our comments and or sending us private messages and giving us shit. Like, this would never, ever happen in digital games, that people would kind of resort to these things. You would go like, oh, I didn't quite like that Kickstarter, but you would not go on their Steam page or like on their crowdfunding campaign page and kind of giving them shit. So that is something that really bothered us. But towards mid-campaign, things became a little bit more quiet. We entered the so-called mid-campaign slumber. People kind of were very, very frantic in the beginning. And then they lost interest. They saw, oh, it's a successful campaign. Oh, it runs for 15 more days. That's interesting. I'm going to check it out later. So what did we do in the meantime? We did live streams, both for the game, but also for the art development. We made new cards. The Star came out, which proved out to be like a very, very beautiful and a very, very popular card as well. And we stayed very, very actively engaged with the community, answered all comments, all questions, and started to be very, very upbeat about things. And then we tried to, and this was always the plan, to like, hey, this is a great thing. We have a very successful campaign. Let's get some press. Let's talk to the Austrian press. Hey, we are, hello. Could you, no? Okay. So we realized that press is not really interested in Tarot board game Kickstarter with, and I have to point it out, of course, the huge exception of FM4, blessed be they, the Austrian youth radio station and web platform, but everyone else has no interest in that. And someone, a colleague of mine, explained it to me. First of all, Tarot is really not something that you see in mainstream press and in gaming press also. It sometimes appears in lifestyle magazines, but that doesn't reflect the size of the movement, And these lifestyle magazines are also not approachable to like report on crowdfunding, because that's the other thing. Crowdfunding used to be like something cool to report on like 4 or 5 years ago, but it's not something that kind of interests people in news outlets. And last but not least, it's also not really something. Board games are also not really something. I mean, sometimes there is an article on like, hey, board games are a very interesting phenomena, but you rarely see like a review for a cool board game on any news outlet, as a matter of fact. And I have to say, we actually went to press agencies in Germany and the US and went like, please take our money, we need press. And they were very professional and said, we would love to take your money, but we won't take your money. We have inquired with several news outlets. You will not get any press for this. Thank you very much. So kudos to those agencies, Dieter Machaiter, for example, in Munich, for being very frank with us and supporting us and not taking our money. Yeah, so we had money because the campaign was very successful, but we had no means to kind of use it on press. But we always had the plan to use it on ads. So we used it for advertisement. Oh, by the way, this is another very tiny press thing that you see here. I don't know how it ended up in this slide, but this is a small. This is a picture of a colleague of ours. We had a feature on like a kind of a in public transport television things. It's called InfoScreen in Vienna, and they also had a feature for Sefirot. That was our other news outlet. So we said like, okay, let's focus on ads. Let's go to YouTubers. Let's use like particular channels where you can place banners, and let's talk to Jalop. So Jalop is a company specialized in kickstarting ads. They have essentially like a couple of platforms on Facebook, and these platforms are focused on like reaching particular target groups. So they can actually activate those groups, run paid ads through them, and then reach target groups. And Jalop was, and we did try to run ads ourselves during the campaign in the very beginning, but we very much didn't get a lot of return of investment from it. Our return of investment, I think, was 0.8, which is not good, as you might think as well. But Jalop really changed the game for us. So here's a chart on return of profit and ad spend, and this bar in the middle, the horizontal line is the return profit limit. So we essentially needed to be kind of around an ROI level of 3 in order to be successful, and we managed that for most of the campaign. We moved things up and down, and sometimes profits kind of broke with that, and something went up again. We experimented with a few things. We had a little bit of a slumber in the last week, but in the end, we pushed in a bunch of money, and especially on the last day, things went up. So this kept the mid-campaign slumber quite active and made things like really interesting towards the very end. So, and then we approached the last days, and we knew that in the last days something might happen, like things might go linear, but things might also catch on, and then people might go like, oh man, I really should get this. And we really hoped for like a strong end of the campaign, which is called The Surge. And I remember, I think it was on the morning of, at 6 o'clock in the morning on April 21st, and I went up, and then I realized that overnight The Surge had happened, and I completely lost it. I became so euphoric that I started to listen to AC/DC's Thunderstruck at 6 o'clock in the morning, dancing to it. Luckily enough, my wife was not at home at this point, because I don't know. it was just like, it was a little bit like you feel like a child at Christmas, you know, like you really want this to happen, you know, you want to enter this mythological phase of like the Kickstarter surge and everything goes up and there's this massive kind of a opera-esque momentum and explosion in the end. And for a childish reason, I mean, there's also monetary reasons for it want to happen, but from an emotional level, I wanted this to happen really, really badly, and then it happened, and then I just became, a little bit excited, as you might tell. Oh my God, this music playing. So, but let's look at the numbers, how that actually looked like. So this was really what is also called FOMO, fear of missing out. Because people see there is a successful campaign, and then they go like, wow, it's a successful campaign, it's ending, I cannot miss out on that, and then they jump on it. And if you look at the numbers in the right chart, you're seeing that the ads didn't even get that strong. It was actually an organic interest that drove things in the end. The ads were like bolstering it quite a bit, but the organic interest was strong. And you also see in the left chart again that while ads became increasingly expensive towards the end, you are spending more, people are less likely to click on things, but then people were incredibly more likely to actually pledge for the campaign. So there was a conversion rate of 16%, which is massive. 16% of people who clicked on the ad actually supported the campaign. So FOMO, last year of the campaign, great success. Yeah, and at the end of the day, so this is this was, I think, in the last 1 or 2 hours of the campaign, we realized it's really big. We managed to get the support of 6,000 people. Some of them also became really, really close to us in the campaign. They supported us. They helped us to deal with the abuse. They might be considered friends, although some of them are like on other continents or on like 2 continents away, not just one. But that was the other great thing in the end, that we realized that we had not just gained money to actually make the project happening in a kind of a big way, but we gained like a big and very, very kind of a vibrant and healthy community that is a ton of fun to work with. You know, like the interactions, I'm always looking forward to post new cards because people are so thankful and so supportive. Nevertheless, at the end of the campaign, we looked a little bit like Schomburg does here in the background. You know, we were simply exhausted. It was the end of the pandemic. It was the end of the campaign. It was the end of winter. It was the end of everything. And we were we were really like at the end of our energies. You know, we worked for 6 months to prepare this campaign, 2 months full time, like without mercy to prepare it, and then ran the campaign. So we were a little bit burned out, one might say. This is still like a little bit of an ongoing toll of us. Like some of us haven't fully recovered from it yet. This is, I think, if we wouldn't have been in a pandemic, you know, I might have just gone to the spa for 2 weeks or something like that. But this is nothing you can do. You can just sit at home and like stare at the wall. Well, at least end of April in Austria. So I think that was an additional factor that we kind of had like a slightly higher toll on physical health, mental health, and like energy levels than we expected. Post-campaign, of course, means that the campaign might be over, but now there is new challenges to be faced. So we're still producing cards, which is still a ton of fun, and it's like my most favorite hobby on earth. I can do it in the middle of the night. It gives me energy, doesn't cost me energy, but we have to take care of logistical things, and they are taxing. Production, international logistics, setting up pledge managers, translating our complex system into the pledge manager system, and then taking care of the community, and then an ongoing amount, and sometimes also like kind of suddenly increasing amount of problems. For example, lumber prices have been going up for 390%. So offers we got in the fall, they just skyrocketed up. And then we was like, why? And it's like, well, lumber prices are up. And so is the production demand for board games, you know, so production capacities are low. Shipping things around the planet is horrible. Even without idiots blocking the Suez Canal, it's very expensive to transport things around the world. It did cost $3,000 to ship something from China to Europe, and now it's 14,000. So this is all something that kind of fucks with the campaign, and this is why you have to stay conservative with numbers. And then, of course, post-campaign is always pre-retail, you know, because this is something that we have to also stay very aware of. You know, you cannot just live off one successful Kickstarter. You know, you have to realize this is a product that might be successful in the market. And while Kickstarter is a great community, and while the people are really great, the tower market itself and the intersection with the board game market are much bigger. So this is the next challenge that we are facing, right? To move into these main markets, we have to use plural here. And while we understand other markets, you know, like digital games, this is also like a lot of new challenges we face right now, because we have to learn to understand these markets in order to operate in them. But it's made, of course, much easier through the support of the campaign. Now, we're almost at the end. Let's have some conclusions. I personally think it's close to impossible to do an excellent Kickstarter like out of thin air and without any resources. You need to have something, you know, strong interest, some sort of proof that there is an interest in what you're doing. You need like a product, or at least a sketch of a product that received very, very strong reactions somehow. You really need dedicated personnel for communication once you kind of go like past a particular size. I could not survive, or I would be dead if it wouldn't be for Jean-Bor, for example. Like, he is taking care of all this communication. If I would do that solo, or with like even or less people, and if I would have to do all this communication with 6,000 people while doing business things and design on the side, you know, I would be kind of done for already. You need to plan all financial things in detail and be very conservative about it, because lumber prices will go up, and, you know, because Canada doesn't want to sell lumber to the US because their president is insane, and things like that will drive lumber prices up. And they will kind of suddenly, your production costs will go up by up to 40%. So I'm actually using an actual number from at least one of our offers. It went up by 40% because of lumber prices, and you need to kind of be able to mitigate those changes. And the planning will get messed up anyway, but the better and the more conservative you plan in the beginning, the more resources you have to balance that out. When you communicate in the campaign, do not take communication for granted. I mean, it's a very general thing, but we realized that, and we still realize that something that we think would be completely obvious doesn't arrive where it should arrive, because people don't read. Sometimes they don't read at all. Sometimes maybe because, you know, it's also, you have an English campaign page, and not everyone who backs it speaks fluent, reads fluent English, so something might get lost. So we have to be very clear and repeat things over and over again. And at the same time, communicate as kindly as possible. It also fits to the general mood that we are trying to have with the people, but it's also something that people really, really cherish. You know, you answer all the time, you're always friendly. And this is something, you know, that the haters have kind of it disarms them. That's the best thing about being as kindly as possible. I could quote Michelle Obama now, but you all know her lines on that one. And be transparent as well. I mean, you don't have to go into transparency on every detail, but be transparent and open about things. And this is also something that is always appreciated. When doing campaigns, there's a huge amount of resources available, in particular from board gaming. And even if you don't want to do a board game style a Kickstarter, you still can learn a huge amount of things from them. And it's important to listen to these advisors, but at the same time, it's also important to be able to not listen to everything. If you follow every single bit of advice that everyone tells you, your vision will get muddy, and you have to find a middle ground, a middle ground on things that make sense, a middle ground where, your vision has to stay true, because otherwise, you're doing design by committee and nothing can come out of that, it gets kind of too muddled. So the right amount of listening, very important. So, and I think we had the right amount of listening now. So it's been a little bit more than now. So I say thank you. Please follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or you can join our Discord. Thank you very much.